gosh, that's too kind, that's too kind, that's too kind. Good evening, NABJ. Thank you, so polite. When news breaks, our first honoree is one of the fresh faces you will see in the crowd of veteran reporters. She was there in Sanford, Florida, as the call grew louder across the nation in the killing of Trayvon Martin. After the death of Florida A&M drum major Robert Champion, she was in Tallahassee to cover the hazing scandal as it unfolded at the university. And in December, as the heart-wrenching images emerged from Newtown, Connecticut, Yamiche Alcindor was there too. It's also safe to say that everybody in this room, including myself, was blown away with her gripping to the minute coverage of the Zimmerman trial. But no matter the story, she comes armed with ways to cover that even most accomplished vets would applaud and should. In her Twitter alone, and I hope you all follow her on Twitter because it's just absolutely incredible to see how she covers these stories. When it comes to the digital age, this woman right here, she just blows me away every single time with every story, and I'm gushing because I've known her for a couple of years and we've done the student project together. But this 2009 graduate from Georgetown is the one to pass on opportunity to learn and grow, and she's leaving to go to NYU to continue her path to education. So that is why we honor our NABJ baby and USA Today's own Yamiche Alcindor as the 2013 Emerging Journalist of the Year.
Yamiche is talented.
Yamiche is the best of old school and new school.
Yamiche is the Energizer Bunny.
Yamiche has been growing by leaps and bounds since she left the Washington Post. She went to Newsday, where she really immersed herself in local coverage, and then went on to USA Today. And with each successive position, she's grown in responsibility, her writing has improved, you can see her chops just developing.
You know, typically when you get a new reporter, you think, oh boy, here we go. You know, this is someone I got to break in. It's going to take some time to get this reporter up to snuff. With Yamiche, there was none of that. I still remember sitting there and reading her first copy that came in. My reaction was, wow. And I said, you know, Yamiche, you and I are going to get along really fine because your copy is just terrific.
She's like a sponge. She just soaks up everything you tell her. She listens very attentively when you talk to her, and she nods, and then she goes and she does it. There have been a number of breaking news stories where Yamiche's work has been very impressive. In covering the Trayvon Martin case, she got into that case from the very beginning, when it first was rising to national attention.
One of the things that I found remarkable about Yamiche was when we had the Newtown shooting, it was a horrible story. She'd been covering some very emotional stories, funerals. She had taken a picture that went viral over the internet of a little boy who had written a note to one of his friends who died. And Yamiche took a picture of it with her iPhone, and CNN gave us credit. I said, Yamiche, if you want to come home, you can come home. And she said to me, no, I want to stay here. This is important that I be covering this story. The country wants to see what's happening here, and I take that responsibility very seriously.
Yamiche is really finding her niche in journalism. She hasn't never been content to have someone just tell her, this is where you belong. If you look around and you're trying to figure out what a journalist needs to be in this day and age, look no farther than Yamiche Alcindor. She embraces the past, she looks to the future, she's willing to learn from those who've come before her. She is covering some of the most important stories in the landscape.
I think we do a little bit better with the applause. There you go.
Thank you so much, NABJ and the board, for selecting me for such an honor. I'm incredibly humbled to be recognized among a sea of emerging journalists who are working just as hard as me to tell stories. Some of them are my very close friends who couldn't be here tonight, as well as many young journalists who understand the challenges that we face. For the past few months, I've had so many journalists share with me their congratulations. I was inspired most by two things: a generation of Black journalists who paved the way and are watching the fruits of their labor grow, and a young generation of journalists who decide, even despite all the issues in our industry and the difficulties, to take on the privilege of being reporters. This award is shared with my family, who is here tonight, because they have seen me through so much. Thank you to my aunt and my cousin for coming all the way from Miami. Thank you especially to my mother and my brother, who have been an amazing foundation for me. Thank you for the special person in my life who has loved me for several months and who has been amazing to me. The list of mentors and colleagues and people who have really sown their seeds into me is long, and people who know who they've helped me, they know who they are. I can't begin to start naming them, but I thank you all for believing in me. I'm often asked why I became a journalist. A good friend of mine, a priest, once told me to live like a saint. He didn't mean that I should be perfect or holier than thou. Instead, he said he asked me to live my life wanting to make an impact. He said we should live our lives in a way that people decades later will value. When I think about that advice and how it translates to journalism, I think about Mamie Till, the mother of Emmett Till, and how she impacted my life in a way she may not ever have imagined. I was just 16 when I heard the story of a young boy maimed for possibly transgressing racial barriers. Suddenly, I knew exactly what I wanted to be. I wanted to be the woman snapping the photo of Emmett Till's casket. I wanted to be the reporter asking Mamie Till why she chose to share her suffering. I wanted to be the journalist bringing America the hard truths about our country. Emmett's disfigured face, his mother's courage, and the journalist bringing his story to America asked me to be a professional witness, and I complied. Each day since that decision, I have hoped to spark conversations about how we as a nation can be better. And in doing so, in the fall of 2012, I wrote about a 16-year-old girl who was sold as a sex slave on the streets of Boston, Massachusetts. In 2009, I wrote about a woman who's been going to the emergency room for the last 20 years for primary care. In telling those stories, I also counted my blessings, which have been so many. In the summer of 2009, I was an NABJ Student Projects participant. I was also part of the New York Times Student Journalism Institute, which gave me lifelong friends. Several news organizations took me from being a frazzled, and I do really mean frazzled intern, to an amazing and composed journalist. Most recently, my editors at USA Today and the leadership of Gannett gave me the amazing opportunity to cover the trial of George Zimmerman and so many other national stories around the country. I want to thank them especially for welcoming me into their newsroom. Lastly, I want to thank all of you. Every journalist out of here, grinding it out and telling those stories. I sit on the shoulders of Black journalists who paved the way and integrated newsrooms decades ago. I can only hope that my shoulders will also be heavy with young journalists who climb for my aspirations. Our work is not easy, and it's not always lauded, but it's honorable and it's worth the effort. Thank you.
Please welcome Terry Owens, Chief Public Information Officer for the Maryland Transit Administration.